Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into a massive corporate clash. One that, for a moment there, just paralyzed a huge chunk of the American streaming world.
Yeah, this is that huge YouTube TV versus Disney fight.
Exactly. The one where, ABC, ESPN, all those Disney channels just vanished from YouTube TV.
Poof. Gone.
And we want to go deep here, not just, the usual who pays what stuff, but really into the power struggle underneath and what this whole thing might tell us about, an identity crisis maybe brewing at YouTube.
Right, because this deep dive, it's about understanding how a massive negotiation like this could just fall apart so spectacularly and why that failure means a lot more than just missing your favorite show for a few days.
Okay.
Based on, the tons of sources we looked at, this move by YouTube TV, which is really Google, let's be clear, it was so aggressive. So unexpected, the reports say it genuinely sent Disney execs scrambling.
Scrambling, like actual panic.
Well, the sources use words like panicking, which suggests this wasn't just, hardball negotiation. It felt like a deliberate shot, a real power play, trying to redraw the map of who calls the shots in content.
Okay, let's break this down. For you listening, we've all seen these carriage disputes pop up, right?
Mm-hmm. All the time.
You get the warnings. Channel X might leave provider Y. And often it just feels like, theater, high stakes, sure. But theater, historically, the content owner, Disney, in this case, they usually have the leverage.
They hold the cards.
Right. They threaten the blackout. People watching get mad. And eventually the cable or streaming company kind of folds, pays a bit more, channels come back. But this time felt really different.
Oh, profoundly different. Now, the basic argument from the sources, it does sound familiar at first. Disney probably wanted, quote, too much money.
That's not exactly shocking news for Disney.
Not at all. We see report after report complaints from other distributors saying Disney uses its big guns, especially ESPN, to demand these really high, sometimes kind of anti-competitive prices for the huge channel bundles. Lots of stuff people don't even watch.
They're known for it. They're the kings of the premium price tag.
Definitely. But here's the twist. Usually, Disney sets the deadline, holds the act. This time, and this is where it gets fascinating.
Yeah.
The sources are clear. It was YouTube that pulled the plug, not Disney. And crucially, they did it before the actual midnight deadline.
They jumped the gun.
They absolutely jumped the gun. Unilaterally just said, nope, content's gone.
Wow. Okay, that little detail, pulling it early, that really shifts things, doesn't it?
Completely changes the narrative. It goes from, oh, they couldn't agree, to, whoa, YouTube made a calculated, aggressive first strike.
Right.
Think about it. A huge platform like YouTube TV, millions of subscribers, deciding on its own to just drop arguably the most valuable live sports and network shows out there, that sends a massive signal.
What kind of signal do you think?
It basically says, we're done playing by the old rules. We're not going to be dictated to anymore. It's like they're saying, we're willing to risk ticking off millions of our own customers to try and break this traditional power dynamic.
So thinking strategically then, what's the target here? Is this about fundamentally changing how streaming works?
It looks like it. For decades, old media giants like Disney, they had the ultimate power because they owned that must-have linear stuff, live sports, big network shows. If you wanted that content, you had to pay their price, play by their rules. YouTube seems to be testing the waters here. Like, how much do people really need that specific Disney bundle? Can we actually survive, maybe even thrive, if we cut ties with the most expensive, arguably most demanding content partner out there?
That's a huge gamble, though.
It's enormous. And that's the core conflict we really need to dig in. It takes this whole thing way beyond just dollars and cents. I mean, yeah, Disney's pricing is always aggressive. The source, every company mentioned says that. But YouTube's move, pulling the plug like that, it suggests something bigger is going on inside Google.
Like a major strategic shift.
Exactly. It hints at an executive team that's either incredibly confident in YouTube's standalone value or maybe incredibly arrogant about keeping subscribers even after pulling the rug out.
And that arrogance or confidence or whatever it was, it immediately kicked off a huge storm, right? Corporate finger pointing, but also, importantly, a lot of customer anger. Let's get into that immediate fallout, because Disney's response was fast and public.
Oh, the fallout was instant. And the tone, at least in the messages flying around, felt really personal. We saw this pointed internal memo go out from Disney's top brass, Dana Walden, Alan Bergman, and ESPN's Jimmy Pitaro, straight to their staff.
And it wasn't just a thanks for your hard work memo.
Not at all. It was thank you, sure. But mostly it was a rallying cry. And it's specifically publicly called out YouTube and Google for how they handled it. They basically used their internal memo to try and control the public story from the get-go.
And what was the big shock for subscribers that came out in that memo? It went beyond just losing the live channels, didn't it?
That's the key. The Disney memo hammered this. YouTube didn't just cut off the live feed. They also, and this is the really stunning part, they deleted all the previously recorded shows and events from people's cloud DVR libraries.
Wait, deleted like stuff people had already saved?
Yep, wiped them out. That was the move that just floored everyone, even, industry folks who've seen it all. You have to understand, normally in these disputes, if you recorded something, it's yours, right? It sits on your DVR or in your cloud storage. The channel might go dark live, but they usually can't just reach in and delete what you already recorded.
So wiping out maybe a whole season of college football games someone recorded. Or all their saved network shows.
Exactly. YouTube crossed a major line there.
That's astonishing, really. It's not just turning off the tap. It's like confiscating everything that already came through. One analyst I saw quoted in the sources compared it to like walking into someone's digital house and taking their VCR tape.
That really captures the feeling, yeah. It felt that invasive. It wasn't just a service disruption. It felt like digital asset seizure from the user's perspective.
And you can bet Disney jumped all over that.
Immediate. Their execs used it to launch this really sharp public attack. They basically said YouTube's move proved how little regard they have for their customers, framing it not as a negotiation tactic, but as just pure contempt for their own.
So Disney's line was, this deletion proves YouTube was just being difficult all along, that it fit a pattern.
That's what they claimed. They said the deletion was consistent with an attitude which was prevalent throughout our negotiation, implying Google was just flexing its tech muscles, trying to bully them, and Disney's words, devalue the very content that helped them build their service.
Okay, so Disney's painting YouTube as the bad guy, disregarding customers. How did YouTube respond? They had to do something, right? Deleting recordings is a PR nightmare.
Oh, yeah. They had to spin it fast. Their public line was basically positioning themselves as the consumer champion. They claimed Disney was the one playing games, using the blackout threat to force a deal that would just hike up prices for everybody.
So we're doing this for you, the customer, to keep your bill low.
Pretty much. And to try and smooth things over with all those angry subscribers who just lost their recording.
They offered money, right?
Yeah, they offered a $20 monthly credit if the dispute kept going.
$20.
Yeah.
Is that significant?
It's not nothing, for sure. But, the sources pointed out how tactical it was. They didn't say how long the credit would last or how long they thought the fight would even go on. It felt less like a real apology and more like a temporary bribe to stop canceling right away, especially during that first weekend when key games or shows were missed.
Just a Band-Aid, maybe?
Kind of felt like it. A financial Band-Aid to stop the immediate bleeding of subscribers.
That temporary feel, it almost highlights the hypocrisy Disney was trying to point out, doesn't it? Even though Disney's got its own issues, let's connect those dots. Their point, Disney saying YouTube devalues content.
Right. Disney argued YouTube wants to devalue the very content that helped them build their service.
But what content actually built YouTube?
And that's the fascinating counter-argument that pops up in the source material. The immediate response, it wasn't Disney's content that built, it was the creators. Millions of them. And the sources argue pretty strongly that YouTube often treats its own foundational creators, the people who actually made YouTube the giant it is, with, similar disregard.
So the same attitude Disney is complaining about that little regard for their customers line. The argument is YouTube shows that same dismissal to its own creators.
Precise. The critique basically goes, look, if you're constantly messing with monetization, if you underpay people, if you prioritize corporate stuff over the creators who built, why should a legacy giant like Disney expect you to treat them any different?
It flips the script entirely. Disney's complaining about a powerful company being a bully, but they're dealing with a company that allegedly acts the same way towards its own internal community.
Yeah, it kind of reframes the whole power dynamic.
And we also can't ignore Disney's other angle here, right? They quickly pointed out that YouTube pulling their channels conveniently helps YouTube's competitors.
Oh, absolutely. They specifically called out Hulu plus Live TV and...
And who owns Hulu plus Live TV again?
Well, majority owned by Disney. So think about it. If you're a YouTube TV subscriber and suddenly you can't watch ESPN for the big game or your local ABC station, what's your easiest, quickest fix?
Switch to Hulu plus Live TV, probably.
Exactly. So every subscriber YouTube lost during that blackout. Potentially a direct win, financially, for Disney's own ecosystem, which makes YouTube's decision look less like just a stand against pricing and maybe more like trying to hurt a competitor's supply line, even if it meant burning their own customers short term.
Wow. Okay, that level of aggression, taking that kind of subscriber risk.
Yeah.
It suggests this fight isn't just about the negotiation table. It points towards that bigger strategic shift you mentioned earlier. The source is calling it the Hollywood pivot.
That pivot, yeah. That seems to be the real heart of what's going on, this potential identity crisis society. And it brings the spotlight right onto YouTube current CEO Neal Mohan.
Okay. The sources seem to have a lot to say about him.
They are incredibly critical of his leadership and the direction.
So let's get into that. What's the characterization of Mohan? What's his alleged obsession?
The sources basically paint him as being, quote, hell-bent on competing with streamers. Think Disney Plus, Netflix. His main focus, they claim, is chasing these glossy, big-budget Hollywood deals, signing partnerships with major studios. And the source material uses the phrase, kissing Hollywood's ass.
Kissing Hollywood's ass.
Yeah, like trying desperately to get YouTube accepted as a traditional entertainment player, you know, like the big studios, rather than leaning into what made YouTube unique, the platform for decentralized, creator-driven stuff.
Which feels like a total U-turn from YouTube's origin. And the sources have some harsh criticism about his leadership style, suggesting he's maybe a bit disconnected from the creator.
The critique is brutal, frankly. There are accusations flying that Mohan, quote, built nothing. That YouTube's huge success over the last decade, that's down to the people before him, the early employees, and most importantly, the creators themselves who build audience from scratch.
So the idea is he inherited this massive success.
Yeah, he was chief product officer before becoming CEO, and the criticism suggests his approach is still very product-focused, maybe not community-focused, like he's riding a wave someone else created, but acting like the master architect.
And what about these idiotic changes the sources mentioned? What specific things point to this disc?
The main one they hammer is the huge push towards short, YouTube's answer to TikTok.
Right, the short vertical videos.
Exactly. Now, Shorts gets massive view numbers, no doubt, but the sources argue the way they've pushed it, the monetization, the focus on chasing trends, and how it seems to have come at the expense of supporting the traditional long-form video creators. They say it actually not worked out and been really stupid.
Stupid in what way? Financially?
Creator loyalty.
Both. Potentially. The argument is it hasn't created sustainable revenue streams in the same way long-form does, and it's alienated some of the core creators who feel neglected. It's seen as just imitating competitors rather than playing to YouTube's unique strengths.
And then there's the personal aspect. The sources claim he's acting like a big shot. Yeah, they talk about him allegedly hobnobbing with Hollywood, going to all the fancy industry events, acting like a celebrity himself, thinking he's too big for his britches, as one put it.
Hobnobbing, okay.
And that stuff matters, right? When the CEO spends his time schmoozing studio heads, focusing budgets on traditional film and TV development, it sends a clear message to the original YouTube creator community.
That they're not the priority.
That they might be becoming secondary. The source suggests this aggressive move against Disney. Maybe it wasn't really about saving users money. Maybe it was partly a performance for the Hollywood crowd. Like, look at me, I'm tough enough to stand up. An act designed to win approval from the traditional media world he wants to join.
Which brings us right back to that central theme the sources keep hitting, the creator betrayal. Let's really unpack why this pivot is seen as so dangerous by the very people who arguably are YouTube.
Yeah, this is the core argument. The source material makes this point very forceful. Why is YouTube so huge? Why does it dominate on smart TV, constantly cited as a top streaming?
Why?
It's almost entirely because people are watching creators on YouTube. They're watching gaming streams, educational channels, commentary shows, independent news, stuff made by individuals or small teams, not big studios. They're not primarily watching traditional TV shows through YouTube TV.
So the platform's real weight, its power, it comes from this massive decentralized base of creators.
Exactly. The source uses the analogy, YouTube is the 1,000-pound gorilla in the digital room. Mm-hmm. But it got that weight, that muscle, from millions of creators building audiences organic, not from chasing expensive Hollywood deals or trying to be the next Netflix.
And the fear is now YouTube is going to just step over them.
That's the deep anxiety, that by chasing Hollywood, by shifting focus and money away from supporting those core creators, YouTube is actively undermining its own foundation. This pivot is seen as an existential threat by many in the creator economy that relies on.
So the platform that got huge because of creators is now potentially sacrificing those creators to chase the very traditional content models it originally disrupted.
That's the perceived betrayal. And this is where the source lays out the ultimate warning. If that creator base feels ignored, unsupported, or just sees the CEO focused on hobnobbing,
they'll leave.
they'll leave. And the source is blunt. If they go somewhere else, that new platform will eventually beat you out because everybody's just going to follow the creators, you dumbass. It's arguing YouTube is risking its entire unique advantage to chase something its users never really asked for from YouTube in the first place. People went to YouTube to get away from traditional Hollywood gatekeepers.
It does sound like a major strategic blind spot, forgetting your core differentiator. But, to be fair, it's not like these attempts to merge creator culture with studio culture have always gone smoothly for either side, right? This takes us into some interesting history and legal fights.
Absolutely. Looking back is crucial here because it shows just how hard it is to bridge that gap between, authentic creator stuff and polished studio production. Mm-hmm. Let's start with YouTube's own big swing and miss, YouTube Red.
Right, YouTube Red, which became YouTube Premium Originals later.
Yeah. That was their first major expensive attempt to basically turn popular YouTubers into traditional TV stars. The source describes it largely as a failure because they took these creators people loved for being quirky and authentic, like Rhett and Linker mentioned, and tried to shoehorn them into these slick, structured, traditional TV formats.
And they spent a lot of money on this, didn't they?
Oh, huge amounts. Reports suggest hundreds of millions over the years. They were pouring cash into high production values, trying to look like Netflix, but often the magic just died in translation. The audience that loved the raw, homemade feel of the original channels, they often didn't show up for the expensive, polished versions.
But there was one huge exception, the one that got away.
Cobra Kai.
Ah, yes.
Cobra Kai.
That was the diamond in the rough for YouTube Original. They greenlit it when basically no traditional studio wanted to touch the Karate Kid legacy again. It got great reviews, had a loyal following on YouTube.
But not big enough for you. Apparently not. The source suggests it just wasn't pulling the massive numbers needed to justify the enormous overall cost higher Originals product. So under pressure, they let it go.
And then what happened?
Sold it to Netflix, where it exploded, became this huge global hit, one of Netflix's most successful revivals ever. The source implies YouTube execs must look back at that and just kick themselves.
Wow.
It kind of shows that even when YouTube did find success with a more traditional format, their internal strategy or structure struggled to really value it or hold on to it long term.
And let's be absolutely clear, Disney made a very similar and very expensive mistake trying to do the reverse, right? Trying to bring YouTubers into their world with maker studios.
Oh, yeah. Disney dropped reportedly $500 million to buy makers, and the explicit goal was exactly that. Take these big YouTube stars and turn them into reliable Disney-style revenue. The source just states flatly, didn't work.
Why not? What was the problem there?
Disney tried. They did massive cross-promotions, tried linking Disney IP with digital stars, but ultimately, the source suggests the very different cultures just couldn't mesh. The highly controlled, brand-safe world of Disney just couldn't integrate the fast-paced, often messy, low-control reality of creators.
And that clash became really obvious during the whole adpocalypse, didn't it? When advertisers got spooked by creator content.
That was a huge moment. The corporate advertising world needs predictability, brand safety above all else. And they suddenly realized just how, unpredictable and sometimes controversial creator content. The source specifically brings up controversies around huge figures like PewDiePie back then.
And advertisers pulled back hard.
They did. And traditional studios like Disney basically saw that and realized, okay, this raw creator stuff is maybe too dicey, too risky for our big, careful marketing mission. So both YouTube Red and Maker Studios kind of proved the same point from different directions. Turning authentic internet stars into traditional TV figures or vice versa is incredibly difficult without killing the magic that made them popular in the first place.
So you've got these two giants, YouTube and Disney, both with a history of kind of fumbling the creator studio integration, now locked in this intense battle over traditional media turf. And for Disney, that battle relies heavily on their biggest weapon, ESPN.
Absolutely. The source material is completely clear on this. For years, Disney has used ESPN like a cudgel. That's the word used. A cudgel to basically bully the cable providers and bully the streaming providers into paying sky-high rates.
A cudgel? How does that work exactly? How do they use ESPN to drive up the cost of everything else?
It's all about the forced bundle. The price Disney charges just for ESPN is already massive, often the single most expensive channel for any cable or stream. But they don't let you just buy ESPN.
And then you have to take other stuff too.
Exactly. The sources detail how Disney forces providers to also carry and pay for a whole bunch of other channels, many with much lower viewership. Think obscure sports channels like the Longhorn Network or other niche channels. They package it all together.
So YouTube TV or Comcast or whoever, they have to pay for all this extra stuff just to get the one channel everyone demands, which is ESPN.
Precisely. It forces the provider to pay for this bloated package, maximizes Disney's total revenue, and inflates the cost that ultimately gets passed down to you, subscriber.
And YouTube knew this was Disney's playbook. They actually tried to get around it years ago, didn't they? By hiring away a key Disney executive. This led to that poaching law.
Yeah, this is really important background. Disney actually sued YouTube Google technically for poaching an executive named Justin.
And who was Con? Why was he so important?
He'd been at Disney for like 20 years, and he was apparently a linchpin in ESPN's contract. He knew the playbook inside and out. Disney's lawsuit claimed him leaving for Google YouTube was a breach of contract. The source notes this seemed really extreme, almost like Disney felt they literally owned the guy and all his specialized knowledge about negotiation.
So YouTube hiring him wasn't just getting a new exec.
No, the implication was crystal clear. YouTube was gearing up to challenge Disney directly on sports rights. They wanted to bypass, maybe acquire some major sports rights themselves, and break that ESPN cudgel by bringing the expert.
That lawsuit then was like the opening shot in this long Cold War over sports.
Pretty much signaled the start of hostilities. Now, that specific lawsuit eventually got set quiet. But the fact Disney sued so aggressively over one exec shows just how vital they consider that ES power and confirms this tension over sports and distribution control has been building for a very long time. This recent carriage, it's just the fight finally spilling out.
And Disney's aggressive bundling, using that ESPN cudgel. It wasn't just YouTube they annoyed, right? Didn't Fubo have a run-in with them too?
Oh yeah, the Fubo situation is a perfect example of Disney's tact. Fubo, another streaming service focused heavily on sports, faced the exact same pressure.
What happened there?
Disney tried to force Fubo to pay these incredibly high, non-negotiable fees for a huge bundle of. Fubo pushed back, saying, look, our subscribers mainly want the sports channels. We don't want to pay for all this other stuff.
So Fubo actually sued Disney over it.
They saw it as an unfair, possibly monopolistic practice, which is a huge risk for a smaller player like Fubo to take on Disney.
Definitely. So what was the outcome? Did they have a big court battle?
No, Disney settled. But here's the kicker. They didn't just settle. They eventually ended up partnering with Fubo and essentially kind of absorbing them into their sphere of influence. The source describes it as Disney now using it as another sports channel they get to control.
Wow. So challenge us in court, and we might just end up owning a piece of you or controlling your distribution anyway.
It certainly demonstrates Disney's playbook for maintaining control over sports distribution, whether through pricing, litigation, or even strategic partnership and acquisition. They're used to getting their way.
Which, again, makes YouTube's move pulling the channels early, deleting the recording so jarring to the established media order.
YouTube seems to be trying to play Disney's hardball game, but it forces this huge question about what YouTube even is. And that identity crisis, that's really the most important thing for you, the listener, to think about, because it affects where you spend your time and your money online. Why did YouTube become so dominant in the first place? Source material keeps coming back. People went to YouTube because they didn't want the polished, controlled world of Disney or traditional Hollywood.
Something different. Authenticity. Creators.
Exactly. They wanted the raw, the unpredictable, the stuff made by real people, content that felt completely different structurally and tonally from the old studio.
Now, YouTube's leadership seems to be chasing exactly what people were trying to escape. That's the paradox.
That's the core paradox the sources highlight. By chasing Hollywood deals, by trying to compete head-to-head with Netflix and Disney Plus Fun Regent, by pouring resources into it. The argument is YouTube is risking becoming just like every other place that people hated. It's abandoning the very thing, that authenticity, that creator-led decentralization that drew its massive audience.
If it just becomes another slick streaming service, why choose YouTube for that?
Right. If YouTube starts to look and feel and cost the same as Netflix or Disney Plus, it loses its unique edge. Why would you open the YouTube app on your TV to watch some expensive traditional style show when you could just go to the source? Especially if YouTube is simultaneously making its core creator happy.
Which connects directly to the business side, the investor question. Why this matters financially. If those creators, the ones who built the 1,000-pound gorilla, start leaving,
then YouTube loses its defining asset, its unique value. The source material strongly suggests the current leadership is maybe coasting on the success built by others. YouTube is huge on smart TVs. Yes, they're a major player. But why? The source clarifies it's because people are watching channels like ours, watching authentic creator content on their It's not because millions are subscribing to their own expensive original streaming shows.
So the TV dominance is built on the backs of creators, not Hollywood actors.
That's the argument. And if those creators feel neglected, if the platform shifts focus away from supporting them, that entire TV dominant impact because the audience follows the talent they connect.
It sounds like a potentially self-destructive path, undermining your foundation because you're chasing the wrong prize.
Yeah.
The platform seems caught between, are we a home for creators and are we the next big studio?
And if they choose the studio path, they just become another player in that incredibly tough expense streaming war, vulnerable to the same problems, soaring content costs, subscriber churn that everyone else. They lose what made them special.
And this whole messy fight we've been talking about, the aggressive tactics, the lawsuits, deleting user content, it really just highlights the dysfunction, doesn't it? The source had that great line summing it up.
Yeah, describing the whole thing is basically a fight between the YouTube dumbass and the Disney dumbass.
Right. It perfectly captures the feeling that there's no real hero here for the average person, the viewer, the creator.
None at all. You've got Disney wielding its traditional expensive ESPN cudgel, using these arguably anti-competitive bundling tactic. And then you've got YouTube making these aggressive, unprecedented moves like deleting content, seemingly driven by this questionable, maybe arrogant strategy shift away from the creators who actually gave them their power.
So who do you root for?
You don't. The outcome is kind of up in the air, but the fight itself just exposes these deep flaws in both the old media model pricing power and potentially the new media model if YouTube really is abandoning its core identity. It's one of those fights where you just, as the source vividly put it, want to get the popcorn and watch them poke each other in the ass.
A sentiment that probably resonates with a lot of consumers and creators stuck in the middle, feeling like pawns in these huge corporate games.
Absolutely. So let's try and wrap this up for everyone listening. We've really dug into this dispute. We saw Disney using its usual, very effective pricing playbook, high demands, forced bundles.
And then we saw YouTube hit back with something unexpected and aggressive, pulling channels early and, crucially, deleting subscriber recording, a move rooted in this bigger, controversial strategy shift under CEO Neal Mohan.
Right. Mohan seems to be steering the ship hard towards Hollywood, trying to compete directly with traditional streamers. But the sources warn this risks alienating the very creators who built YouTube. Giant, potentially a suicidal move to become just like every other place.
So the key takeaway for you listening is really about this fundamental question. What is YouTube trying to be now? Is it still that decentralized platform powered by individual creators, which was its strength, its unique value? Or is it morphing into just another centralized streaming studio chasing expensive traditional content?
The evidence we've discussed suggests it's leaning heavily towards the latter, right? And if that continues, YouTube risks losing what made it dominate in the first place, just becoming another player scrambling in the crowd streaming.
Which leads us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you to consider. If this kind of corporate arrogance, this chasing of Hollywood validation, continues to drive established platforms, not just YouTube, but others too, to sideline or abandon the creators who actually made them popular, where does that next wave of authentic, non-Hollywood talent go?
And maybe more importantly, thinking about how fast YouTube itself rose up to challenge old media. How quickly could a new platform, one genuinely focused on creators, emerge and potentially overtake these current giants who seem so busy fighting each other over the traditional scraps that they've forgotten who gave them their power in the first place?
That's a fascinating question. Almost brings us full circle back to the original promise of YouTube, doesn't it? What's the next disruption going to be when the current disruptors start acting like the old guard?
Something to think about. We'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into a truly high-stakes battle for the future of content.